Welcome, Dr. Munyeza, to this particular interview. I'm so glad and so humbled to have you. How are you today?
I'm good, Wilbert. Thank you so much for inviting me for your talk and for your platform and your viewers. I hope you're well.
I'm very well, and I'm so honored to have you.
Oh, great. Good to be here.
When anybody hears shingimunyeza, people have been putting me under a lot of pressure. When I think I made a mistake by informing my audience that I'm going to have you. Because it then put a lot of psychological pressure on me to say, hey, this must be at another level.
No, not at all. Just an ordinary man trying to do his best for his generation and his country.
Wow, that's amazing. You know what? When somebody reads your story or watch some of your videos, you cannot just but shake your head and say, wow, how could somebody come from humble beginnings, rising to become a group CEO, is a senior pastor at the same time, and all these things. What would you say about yourself if somebody was to ask you, who is Shingimunyeza and what does he stand for?
Well, Shingimunyeza is rural bred and born, and found Christ as his own Savior and Lord. Married to Wilma, and we have a daughter who is also now married.
Wow.
We have served the Lord for the past over 37 years. Yeah, we have worked in the marketplace, and I love to serve my country. I love to serve my generation, and I love my family.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that sums it up. But simplistically put, an ordinary person. I don't like to complicate things around me. So I have no aura. You can
That's amazing.
You can bump into me in the street, and that's it. So I don't want to put all sorts of high walls around me. So yeah,
wow.
Just try and simplify life.
Beautiful stuff. So we are in the COVID-19 crisis right now, and many people are panicking. People are losing jobs across the world. Economies are slowing down and all this. And I thought maybe it could be the right time for us to start by saying, Dr. Munyeza, what sort of mindset should we expect entrepreneurs or potential entrepreneurs to have in a time like this, in a crisis?
Well, first and foremost, entrepreneurs thrive in crisis, and I mean it. When I say they thrive in a crisis, is that you almost look for a storm, and they always look for a perfect storm. And I think COVID-19 is a perfect storm in that it has kind of paralyzed the entire globe, but at the same time, it offers immense opportunities. So the mindset of an entrepreneur during a crisis is, first of all, you need to feed your spirit and your mind on truth and fact. It's very difficult in this world of junk media and fake news. There's so much of an avalanche of information about COVID-19, and a lot of people are feeding on all this, and some of it just causes you to be despondent, afraid, anxious, traumatized even. So you need to reflect and say, look, I'm going to just look for sites that give me truth and facts. I'm going to feed my spirit with the truth. I'm going to just spend time talking to people who will give me truth and fact. Also read more on understanding the impact of the crisis on the global economies, your regional economies, and then your own national economy, wherever you're operating from, whether it's Botswana, Zimbabwe, South Africa, Europe, wherever. But also, more specifically, spend time reading about resist the impact. There's so much out there that has been churned out, which is so rich, full of facts and researches and that are ongoing about your own sector where you're operating from. And look at related sectors as well, and see what the impact is on your own sector where you're operating from. And if you're looking for new sectors, then I'll talk about those later. Look out for new needs and new waning needs. So there are new needs that are emerging on the horizon, but there are also waning needs, the things that we used to think this is a real need. For example, what I think is a waning need is the whole desire of putting up office blocks and that whole infrastructure. So that whole shared economy or that economy of, oh, I'm going to the office. You'll see just now people will get used. Just say, look, let's meet online. So
online, yes.
So there might not be any need. Maybe after 3 months, if we carry on like this for at least 3 months, we will all have to institutionalize our own homes, which were actually not fully utilized to become equipped with all the technology that we need. And so we can carry on with meetings, and that only factories where there's productivity is where you might need to go. But so that is a waning need, but there's also an emerging need there of shared economies. And look out for technological shifts. At the moment, whilst we talk, the technological shifts that are happening, this happened in the midst of the implementation of 5G, which is an amazing technology. I know there are conspiracies around all that. Ignore some of those and get down to truth and fact and try and understand what's going on there. And exercise and eat well. Your healthy mind is important, and a fit body is important. So you're asking me, what should we be doing? That's probably in a nutshell, maybe what I'm doing myself.
Beautiful, beautiful. So what would be your message to business leaders out there? I know it's a very traumatic time, you know, running an empire at this particular juncture. There are a lot of changes that need to take place in terms of technological advancements, in terms of re-strategizing. Like you were saying that there are some needs that are waning out and some new needs coming in. Having been at the helm of, you know, a group of hotels and all manner of franchises and stuff like that, what would be your advice to CEOs out there?
Initially, my advice to CEOs out there is, you know, one needs to look at the real impact. You also need to face the real impact of this whole pandemic on your current business. The problem is that many people are not doing that assessment at the moment. They are stuck with waiting. So they are waiting for it's almost like waiting for the storm to be over. This is not a storm that comes and goes. This is a storm that becomes the norm. So this whole COVID-19, of course, the disease part might go, which I hope it does. But in terms of whatever else it has caused, it's not a storm that is going. So it has changed the whole, it's not a change of weather, it is a change of climate. So there's a climate change in the business sector. So it's not a weather change where you say, well, it's going to be sunshine just now. So you've got to then adopt to the new normal, and the new normal is a scenario where every aspect of business across the board has been affected. So understand the impact on your current business model. So all business model, not some, but all business model have been affected. They've been jolted. They've been altered. So you will need to understand the impact of all this. So realistically speaking, I would say, look at that impact. Look at so the business model is the first thing you start off. But to understand your business model, you've got to understand the needs you're meeting. How have they been affected, and what has been affected? Because businesses exist to meet a need. Maybe some of those needs are no longer there. They're gone.
Right.
They're gone with the crisis. But there could also be emerging needs. Look out for those emerging needs. That helps you to start reworking your business model. And then after reworking that, look at the technology that might be required to move forward. So because there's technological shifts as well, look at the technology that that is required. After looking at the technology that has been required, look at the skills that are now emerging or the skills that have become redundant. Without that, you are then you're then caught up with a situation where you don't know what the technological requirements are, the skills are. Once you've done that, one needs to start working on the resources you require now, however broadly you can put it. So yeah, I would say that business leaders, this is the time to work as hard as you can. This is not a time to wait and see. So yeah, like I was saying, those are the issues that we need to address as a business leader. And I just summed up. You look out the impact of this on your business model, the technologies that you might have to leverage on, the skills that are waning and emerging that you need to work on, as well as the resources that you need. And so that's probably the things that any business leader needs to start working on now, in my view.
Beautiful stuff. So I know that quite a lot of people have lost jobs. Some are not sure about their future. A number of small and micro enterprises have folded up or will fold up. Somebody's thinking, what sort of business can I do? Are there any ideas that can be thrown around during COVID-19 and probably after?
Well, let me just speak really from a basic level, because sometimes we complicate these things. What has emerged out of COVID-19 is that nations, societies, communities ought first of all to feed themselves.
Feed themselves.
Yeah, just basically, you will find if this shutdown is prolonged, like in communities in Africa, you will find that the biggest thing that will start affecting this whole physical distancing, hygiene, what, stay at home, will be because people just want to eat.
Right.
And now, if you cannot feed your own people, or if you cannot feed yourselves, you are then dependent on people from outside to send you food. Now, what has happened at a global scale is that people are now focused internally to feed themselves. Now, the telltale signs were, for the first time in the UK, in Australia, in the States, where supermarkets were running dry because people were hoarding food for the shutdown.
True.
Now, there is no productivity out there at a global scale. That has all been shut down as well. But the first thing, before you start talking about anything else, is that have you ate? Have you found something to eat?
To eat,
so can you feed? Yeah. So industries around food and food security will do extremely well. So, for example, farming, agriculture, agro-based agro-industries, and so on. These are industries that should flourish, particularly in Zimbabwe, where we've got good soils and so on. We need to sort out our agriculture here. And the sub-region, whether it's about Botswana, Namibia, South African, Mozambique, and Zambia, just the SADC region, there's good agricultural land and agricultural activity, whether from livestock to crop farming and so on. We need to look at. So the first port of call is that the next industry that will need to be will compete next to that is actually the health services sector, because this pandemic, what it has exposed is our need to save lives, but not so much just the pandemic itself. There are other health issues, our health infrastructure, and in the subcontinent is very weak, is substandard, but there is an opportunity there. So if people eat and if they're not well, they must know that they can be treated. So you just follow that logical and look at technologies around there, developments around there, and make sure you leverage yourselves on there. Once you looked at that, you must also look at what can you trade at the end. So trading for you has to start off locally. So produce to sell to the local environment, to the local market. So produce to save your country, your communities. What we've found out is with COVID-19, now we can produce these masks locally. We thought we could just import them. People are now being innovative. We thought we could import sanitizers, and now people are producing these sanitizers locally. So we are being forced to look locally and produce for the local market initially. What that does is that it sorts out the import substitution. By and large, the sub-region, Africa is a net importer at a continental level. We actually import, can you believe it, that we import over 60% of our food requirements in Africa with so much fertile soil.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, so we need to go on a journey of import substitution. Whatever we were importing, whether it was trinkets, things we didn't like, things we liked, we need to now start looking at how do we produce these things locally. But if we can't produce them locally, how do we trade regionally? Because going far afield, it's going to be more expensive. It's going to be more difficult. And it's going to be more complex because nations are going to manage who's coming in, what's coming in, and who's trading with who because of the health consciousness. The pandemic effects will not die. After the shutdown, we will not say, oh, there goes COVID-19. No, it will probably wane away over a longer period of time than we think. And still there, people will be nations will be taking precautions around who's coming in and who's going out. So those are the industries. Now, when you look at resources, Africa is very rich with mineral resources. One of the, and whether it's diamonds, whether it is gold, platinum, copper, chrome, one of those minerals that I think will quickly outshine is the gold one. For example, in Zimbabwe, we have huge reserves of gold. We need to tap into that because the globe is printing lots of money. So investors will be rushing to more stable currency, which will be the gold reserves. So you'll find the gold price will start skyrocketing right now. America has just printed 2 trillion American dollars. And so most of the economies are going to start to resuscitate their own local economies is they're going to print money. So you need something that will hedge against that inflationary push due to the printing of money. So I'm just speaking broadly here, and I hope that I'm not trying to be an expert in any way. This is how I see things. So I'm looking at my businesses. So the other one is the technologies. So big data is a big one. E-commerce is a big one. Renewable energies, those are big ones now. To start looking at and the linkages around there. Aspects like shared economies, the artificial intelligence that's coming in. Cryptocurrencies is going to be a big one as we move into this era where everybody is printing money. So cryptocurrencies are going to also be something to watch and make sure that you do the right thing there. And so, these are thoughts that and things that, and some of my businesses are already in this sort of sector. So I'm spending more time reading around this, like my fintech business, we're looking at cryptocurrency, we're looking at payment platforms, and so on and so forth. We're also looking at artificial intelligence, how it will help businesses to model things pretty quickly and also to assess markets quicker and be more predictive in terms of core target markets. So we're looking at that. Renewable energy, solar, biodegradable energy, biomass energies, and that sort of line of renewable energy. So these are things that we need to start looking at, because more of the same is not going to work.
True that. No, thank you so much. What would be your thoughts on, I know hospitality industry and tourism has been affected a lot by this. What is the hope of people in hospitality and tourism going forward?
As you might know, that hospitality and tourism has been my passion for over 25 years.
Yes.
Unfortunately, this industry is very temperamental to global events, particularly where they affect safety of tourists. Now, a pandemic of this nature really tells tourists that you should not travel. Don't go anywhere. So what you will find is that people would travel more locally, because they would trust the local infrastructure on health and safety issues. They will travel less regionally. They will probably not travel continentally and abroad.
Abroad, yeah.
So you'll find it will take a little longer, depending on how the effects of the COVID-19. What it will be, when do we start seeing some green shoots that, well, we've now managed to control this in major economies like the US, like Europe, where it's topping the charts there in terms of those infected and affected. So I don't see tourism taking off quickly in the next 12 to 18 months. People are going to be, because tourism is, in terms of tourism, so tourism is a luxury, it's leisure. So you will not find people exposing themselves to disease. And when you look at Africa, our infrastructure is not as good as it is abroad, but also our health institutions are suspect to tourists. So they will not just come and find themselves struggling for life here. So we'll find tourism into the sub-Saharan Africa really constrained, particularly from our major source markets like Europe and Americas and even Asia. The airline, the travel industry, the airline industry is also going to be badly affected. So the earlier shoots you'll find is maybe trade that will start picking up in the short term, but real tourism and travel is going to be constrained at the very least 12 to 18 months.
All right. No, thank you so much. I know, I don't know whether you have some thoughts towards education sector, seeing that right now schools are closed, and we will have to find a way to bring back these children to school. And if we don't do something correctly, the next generation could be doomed. What are your thoughts around that area? What should we do in terms of education?
Well, education had started e-learning some period back. Unfortunately, they didn't scale this and accelerate this to the level that it should have been. Digitization is the norm, and I think Africa is still caught up in an analog era. So we need to quickly look at digitization, touching even our rural communities. So I think that is going to be a lifesaver in the short term. But in the long term, we will need to still continue to reconfigure our education system. People must still gather. Kids must still go back to school. I don't think that will be eliminated in my view. But to augment the advent of new technologies and digitization, e-learning has to be the mainstay of every institution of learning. So I see that as part of. So those in the education sector, they better invest heavily in terms of digitization and e-learning.
Wow. Thank you so much, Dr. MUNYEZA. You have said so many nuggets. You've given us a lot of nuggets there. Now, looking at your history, you have won a number of awards including the prestigious Zimbabwe Tourism Authority, the 3 consecutive years as the Personality of the Year, and many other awards. What would you say? For me, that means you are a man of excellence. What advice do you have for business leaders and anybody else who might be interested in achieving great things from grassroots level going high up?
Well, first and foremost, I would say that you need to always be open to change, always. And I think I'm captive to habits and traditions. So we need to always embrace change. Right now, many people, I've got residual investments in tourism and hospitality.
Right.
Not my major investments now. I've divested into big data, fintech, renewable energies, into grain imports, into fuel imports. I have now moved into entrepreneurship development. These are sectors I wasn't in over 5 years ago. So change, because I realized that the globe was changing, and that hospitality in itself was always going to be susceptible to things like COVID. So if I was still exposed the way I was exposed over 5 years ago in tourism, where 80% of my investments were in hospitality and tourism, I would be crying today, because in Zimbabwe, the entire tourism sector has shut down. And it's gonna take 18 months to take off. But I can tell you, my big data fintech business is roaring right now. Renewable energy, solar energy is doing very well. You know, entrepreneurship development, incubation is also taking off. So if I hadn't invested in those, so be open to change, and also change within your sector. I'm just an entrepreneur, so I look at changes in various sectors. So I'm not a one sector person where I must just look at tourism and see where it's going. But I'm looking at least 5 sectors that I'm working around on. So that's one. So allow yourself to be disrupted. Before, well, I'd say disrupt yourself before you are disrupted. So that's change.
Interesting.
Just expose yourself. Say, look, this is no longer working. I need to change before you are changed, because forced change on you is not always good. You'll end up becoming slave to that change. The next thing is invest a lot of time in learning new technologies, new ways of doing things, be on the cutting edge of understanding trends and analyze them a little bit deeper. Most people are only just caught up in reading stuff that's in the newspapers. Go a little bit deeper to research documents that are being done on particular industries, so you understand the tectonic shifts that are happening in your sector. Be a student of your own local economic shifts and global economies, because we are under the globalization era right now. But also there's what I call globality. Globality is a term that has now been carved out to mean that you compete with everyone, everywhere, for everything. So don't be content with just dominating your own local market. Just understand how it can be disrupted by global competition, because new products, new services, new technologies come and impose themselves on you, and you'll be out of business. Like right now, COVID-19 has exposed those who were just saying, oh, well, I'm happy in my little corner. Now, this global phenomenon, which is a pandemic, has now affected all of us. That means you're now having to compete at a global level. And always look at new skills and acquiring new skills. Many of us are just looking at the acquisition of skills as just qualifications. Africans by nature like qualifications. That's not wrong in itself. But I would also look at the skills acquisition. Are you learning new skills yourself? A lot of people of my generation are actually visitors to technology. We should now be at least residents to technology. For me, in terms of ICT and these technologies, I'm no longer a visitor, I'm no longer a resident, but I'm a citizen now. So I learn. I have to make sure I am up to date with what are the, like what's going on in the artificial intelligence. And learning a little bit more and be a purveyor of those technologies. And I also am asking myself, cryptocurrencies, what are the developments there? What's happening on the renewable energies front? And not always say, look, I don't know, and you stick to your old stuff. That stuff is going on. And remember, robots will soon be taking over some of our jobs anyway.
True.
So you might as well understand how they will do that so that you'll be able to control the robots and so on and so forth. So digitization is a big thing for me. And I don't think many people, my generation, are investing enough time to understand the impact of digitization on their business models.
Wow. Wow. We are so honored to hear all these things from you, Doc. Now, I know you are also a man of God, a great man of God. What would you say, generally, what is your advice to the church? Because of late, I've been talking to people and I say, sometimes as the church, we are always thinking of going to heaven, but the Bible didn't say we were not created for going to heaven. We were created to dominate the earth, to multiply, and to replenish the earth. What message do you have for Christians?
Well, that will require a whole session, but let me just summarize it as follows.
Yes.
Jesus said that we must occupy till he comes.
Yes, I like that.
We must dominate. You know, in Genesis, it says you must have dominion, you must be fruitful, and then also multiply.
Right.
These three things were about power, it was about possessions, it was about pleasure.
Right.
And when God said that you must have power to dominate, we must look at how do we dominate for God's glory as a Christian. So in this environment, there should not be any sector or any region that must now be quarantined and say, look, this is for the devil, leave it alone. We must permeate everything and declare God's glory in those sectors. So for Christians, it is to be able to be heaven bound, but be earthly relevant. I think I'll summarize that.
Beautiful. I like that.
We must be heaven bound, but we must be relevant to where we are. We must serve God. The world needs redemption. The world needs salvation. And you cannot bring that without taking the territory that the world is in. So we need to find how do we take territory in the various spheres of our communities, our nations, the globe, and make sure that we are bringing in the gospel in those aspects as well.
Right. Yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much. Do you have anything that is at the back of your mind that you feel you want the audience to hear? And also, as you conclude, I heard you talking about entrepreneurial development. I think this is very good news for many of our young people across Africa, not only young, but everybody, you know, at this juncture. So we would be interested to know this entrepreneurial development that you are doing. How does it work? How can somebody contact you if they need that kind?
Well, just to answer, you asked two things, my closing comments and entrepreneur. Let me start with the entrepreneurial side. I've gone into a joint venture with the Africa's leader in enterprise incubation, and it's called Race Corp. And Race Corp is based out of South Africa. It's now in 4 countries and going into another 4 countries. I've partnered with them for Zimbabwe as a prosperator, where our programs are programmatic. We take DFIs, we take corporates who want to develop, number one, either the supply side of their businesses or the market side. And they want to develop entrepreneurs and businesses in either or both. And so we then work in in scouting for entrepreneurs, either who want to be on the supply side or on the market side. And then they will be able to fund the whole program over from between 6 months to 3-year period.
All right.
So we look at your development agencies, we look at your corporates, we look at even governments. At the moment, we're looking at, we're working with the EU, where they're rolling out what they call the dairy value chain and trying to raise 4,000 communal dairy farmers. It's a program we are now embarking on over the next 3 years. So we raise these farmers from the rural areas, we incubate them, we accelerate them and scale them from 5 heifers to 50 heifers and even to 100 heifers, so that we grow the milk production in Zimbabwe. We're doing this program in Zimbabwe. Current milk production is around between 60 and 70 million liters per annum. It used to be 250 million liters per annum in 1999 before the land reform program. So we want to go back there where we need to start exporting milk. At the moment, we are importing milk for our own consumption. So in order to do that, we raise communal farmers who we call business people and equip them with the necessary skills and the necessary infrastructure, and we begin to roll out that. Another area we'll be going into is artisanal mining as well. And we're looking at that as an opportunity as well. But we're also looking at tech, working with the tech companies here, how they can raise young entrepreneurs who will be able to go into the tech sector, providing applications that will localize certain products and programs which we're still importing. You know, we're spending so much money paying for systems and platforms in foreign currency when we could actually develop them locally and pay the local currency and not waste our foreign currency in all this. Parting shots for me, Wilfred, is that take the COVID-19 shutdown period as a boot camp where you're going to reboot your skills base, your knowledge base, and your wisdom on how you would tackle this season that has just come upon us. And stay away from feeding yourself with negativity, with wrong information, fake news. Stay alert. And I would also say, stay fit and healthy. Eat healthily as you are at home, and stay at home. Exercise, but also sanitize, social distancing, and stay at home. We need us to be alive post this period so that we can do better and do more.
I just got a message here. This will be my last. I know you have already given closing shot. I'm just getting a message asking, so how does someone start from being maybe a self-employed, running, you know, a business alone, and then become a multimillionaire and growing a business as a CEO? How do you scale yourself up?
Well, it's a long journey in that you must understand that, first of all, over a long period of time. So you cannot just say, look, oh no, I want to meet this need because people want this now. For example, let's just say the sanitizers are only needed for now. And then you say, look, I'm going to set up an empire of manufacturing sanitizers. Maybe after 6 months, we don't need as much sanitization as we need. So you need to assess that the need you're meeting is going beyond current trends. So first of all, it must be sustainable. And the way you're producing or meeting that need, it's also sustainable. That means you're using sustainable methods, sustainable technology, sustainable skills. Once you've done that, you must look at what sort of strategies and linkages or strategic partnerships that you need, and how do you reach your markets? Because market reach is very important. So you must now looking at the technologies on how you reach the markets, the distribution channels that you must use. You must look at that depending on the nature of your product or your service, and then take time to understand your capital requirements. and look at who also is maybe in the same space, so that you really hone in on your competitive advantages and your and that you leverage on your key competences there, because you might produce something that is being produced better by somebody else. So you might be a one-day wonder until the guys who have got the competing the competencies that are better than you come and just destroy you. So hone in on your own competencies and leverage on your competitive advantages and begin to grow. The rest depends on the markets, depend on how you see the markets, how you leverage on your economy and production cycles, the weather, also global warming, what's the impact, technologies, what's the impact. But don't forget, politics also plays a big part in your business. Stay alert to the political shifts that do have an impact on your business. Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Munyeza. We really, really appreciate your time, and everything you have shared with us is treasure. Thank you very much, and God bless you. I hope we will have you again.
Thank you very much, Wilfred, and all the best to you and your audience. And as I said earlier on, be safe, sanitize, social, physical distance, and stay at home. God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a great day.